All right, let's go ahead and get started. We might have a few more people trickle in, but we are going to spend the next hour and a half talking about homeowner-assisted programs and possibly have a little fun at the end of the 90 minutes. So just a little carrot out there for you to hang out all the way till the end. I know we just coming off of lunch, so everybody's doing well, or do we need to get up and stretch at all for a second? Everybody's doing good? Okay. If I see, could I bother you to just hop on a table that has a little, whatever it's called, a dabbler, something. What is it? A dauber. Okay, you can see that I'm not a big bingo player. I just carry them around, for some reason. But all right, for those of you who haven't been with me yet today, I'm Staci Horwitz. I'm with the City of Lakes Community Land Trust out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. And as I mentioned, we are here for homeowner-assisted programs. So what we're going to do this afternoon is we're going to touch base on what a home buyer or homeowner-assisted program looks like, some of the situations where you might be able to apply the program and the concept, as well as some of the core elements that you need to consider if you're thinking about using this strategy of community land trust ownership or shared equity program to assist existing homeowners. And then I'm just going to touch base on a couple of examples that we've done at the Community Land Trust at the City of Lakes. Common question we get is how do you fund this? And so I'll touch base on that a little bit. And then we will wrap up with some practices and lessons learned. And as I mentioned, we're going to have a little bit of fun the last 15, 20 minutes. And so just hang in there and ask questions. This isn't really meant for me to be up here lecturing you the whole time. It is really about dialogue and conversation because I want you to get what you want from this discussion. So the overall program concept for a homebuyer assisted program is essentially where we usually help a new homeowner get into ownership with some type of affordability investment. We're using a similar level of investment to help an existing homeowner who's at risk of losing their home. And it can be a number of different situations. Essentially, in most cases, that affordability investment is going to address a housing-related financial challenge. Someone who's entered tax forfeiture, someone who may be facing mortgage foreclosure. And in some cases, we're seeing more and more in long-term homeowners is significant rehab that is impacting the sustainability of the home. So all of those situations, there is an opportunity to use community land trust or shared equity programs to help that individual or family stay in the home. And what happens is essentially, if that investment that you need to put in the home to solve that situation is fairly equivalent to what you would normally invest in a property, then you can go in and satisfy that housing-related financial challenge, or in some cases address that significant financial need, rehab. And in consideration for that, the homeowner is then going to place the home in the land trust. If it is a single-family home, townhome, wherever there's a parcel of land to take title to, the land trust or shared equity program is going to take title to that land, and that house is going to be subject to all the resale restrictions just as if it had been acquired into the program. The homeowner stays in the home for as long as they want to, and essentially they're going to escrow for taxes, insurance, and lease fee with the land trust. That's the general program concept. There's a lot of layers to it. You're working with individuals and families who have been in the home, sometimes for generations, sometimes for decades, and this becomes a very emotional situation. So you need to be willing to meet people where they're at and with no judgment. Because oftentimes, in our experience, by the time they've come to the land trust for assistance, we are literally their last option to retain ownership. Otherwise, they will looking at loss of their home, potential homelessness, and if you think about it, 40 years of investment could be lost. Where we've seen this apply most, or where you could possibly use these situations, are tax forfeiture. This is how it all started with the City of Lakes Community Land Trust in helping homeowners stay in their homes. It was a fourth generation home The aunt had passed away and the nephew was living in the home at the time on disability. And unbeknownst to him, there was a small mortgage on the property and it was headed into tax forfeiture, as well as being about $10,000 behind on utilities. It was actually the executor of the state who came to us and said, is there any chance you can help this young man retain ownership of his family home? She had no other heirs. It was the nephew that was supposed to inherit the home. And this was the first time we did this in 2010, where we stepped in and we satisfied the mortgage, we satisfied the tax forfeiture, and we even satisfied the utilities. So it basically got him back to a level playing field when it came to his housing. We also happened to be in the middle of neighborhood stabilization dollars, and because it was facing foreclosure, we could leverage those funds to do rehab, and we went in and did about $70,000 worth of rehab post-conversion into the land trust. What that experience taught us, and that's one of the things that we'll kind of touch base on through the afternoon, is that it is really important that you're able to do the rehab in addition to the financial assistance in the front end. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as to why that's so important. Mortgage foreclosure, this can look a couple different ways. We're seeing situations where people have refinanced and they've leveraged all the equity they had in their home, and now they're not able to make those payments or are continuing to be in a challenging situation. Those are a little more difficult to use this strategy because oftentimes the amount that needs to be satisfied is significant. It could be a couple $100,000. It just sometimes is beyond what we can reach and what would be our usual investment. What is beneficial if someone is facing mortgage foreclosure when the amount exceeds what you would normally invest is to really think about whether or not they're in a position to refinance. Because similar to the buyer-driven program, you could bring that assistance, help them refinance to an affordable mortgage amount, and they might be set up for long-term sustainability. So instead of paying on a $200,000 mortgage, they might be paying on a $100,000 mortgage. So that is one way if somebody's facing a mortgage foreclosure. Usually if it's an existing homeowner, that mortgage is pretty small, right? They've been in the home 20 years, they've been in the home 30 years. If they have not refinanced and they're just bumping up against time, one example is we had a homeowner, strong supporter of the land trust. She was ready to retire, still working full-time, simply to pay her mortgage, and she had a $60,000 mortgage on her house. Because we have kind of a one-on-one investment that we usually don't bring more than what someone can bring to a transaction, she wanted to refinance, and $30,000 was affordable to her, but $60,000 was not. So she agreed to have the home become part of the land trust. She refinanced. She now has a $30,000 mortgage. She also needed new furnace, new water heater, all these things that she could not afford. We were able to come in and address those, which are also a grant to the property along with that affordability investment. So it really can position a homeowner in really restabilizing that household. So that is one, when it comes to the mortgage piece, you really need to dig in to see what's out there, because what people come to you with, I just had this situation, significant rehab. I'm estimating about $250,000 to $300,000 rehab on the home based on what has been shared with me in my drive-by of the home. But then in the second conversation, it's like, well, you know, I had this mortgage. I haven't done a title search yet on the property. And then the third conversation, well, you know, I think that one was satisfied, but then there was these two other ones. I'm like, okay, let's just take a breath. Let's get your application in. Let us run a title search. Let's see what's really out there. Because usually what you're being informed about is just the tip of the iceberg. And you really need to do your homework and what I call our due diligence for us to decide whether or not we can step in and assist a homeowner. The other thing that's really important to understand is your tax forfeiture process if you're going to think about doing this with tax forfeited properties. And again, these are occupied tax forfeited properties. These are not the ones where people have been evicted and you're stepping in and buying a vacant property. I've learned more about the tax forfeiture property process in Hennepin County than I ever wanted to. But it's been crucial because when someone comes to us and they're in tax forfeiture, I can understand what it means when they tell me they've signed a confession of judgment and they're in a contract for deed and what they need to pay off. The other thing that's really important is that in our county, when the deed is actually forfeited, it's forfeited to the state. and doesn't matter who pays off that tax forfeited amount, the deed goes back to the last owner. So if the land trust steps in and pays off that tax forfeiture, there's a period of vulnerability where technically we are not have any title to anything. So we've had to kind of figure out how we secure that investment that we may come to satisfy the tax forfeiture. So you really need to understand, one of the situations we didn't get into but came to us was a homeowner who, quote unquote, had an angel investor help him to the tune of a 25% interest rate on the loan that he had offered to give him for paying off his taxes. What that angel investor did not know, because he did not do his homework, was that the deed was going to come back to the gentleman we were working with who was living in the van at the time. For better or for worse, didn't really like the angel investor, so when the county called and said the deed was back and who should the keys go to, I'm like, give them back to the homeowner, because once he's in the home, the angel investor's got to figure out how to get him out. He moved in that afternoon. Took us a year and a half, but the angel investor finally negotiated with us and allowed us to come in and take ownership of the land and to help that particular homeowner. But you know what? It was a gentleman who had a traumatic brain injury, felt like he'd been taken advantage of. I'm like, it's your own fault. You didn't know the process. You thought you were just going to hang this over his head the whole time, and he kind of tripped up the angel investor because he was very far from being an angel. Other situations that you may find, predatory mortgages. We're not seeing them as much, but I think they're starting to creep up a little bit in the current market. The adjustable rates, the balloon payments, all those type of things. We've only done that once, and if you've never seen a negative amortization loan, consider yourself fortunate. They are really ugly. I just don't know how anybody would ever get out of one of those once everything started to kick in. So that was a refinance situation. The other one that we've done recently is a satisfying contract for deeds. So you have individuals who have been in contract for deeds for 15, 20 years, and they are not in a position to refinance. So they are up against, again, losing the home because the contract is coming due and they're not able to refinance. So this could be another situation where you could step in, satisfy what's remaining on the contract for deed, have the title become to the improvements, go to the homeowner, and then the land goes to the land trust. We've talked about modification and refinance for affordability, as well as significant home repairs. The other one that you may run into quite a bit is municipal mandated repairs. Any thoughts on what those are? Code enforcement. And if you have an aggressive city, that can rack up really quickly. One of the homeowners we helped had $14,000 in special assessments from the city for trees and for trim on garages and things. So that goes to taxes, and when you think about tax forfeiture, you just start to see this spiral, right? You start to see the assessments rack up, they can't afford the taxes, they start to go into tax delinquency now, and they're in tax forfeiture, all because of repairs. And for those of you who are in the partnership, this is another example of partnerships and the importance of them. So Hennepin County is the one who came to us with a number of tax forfeiture situations early on with the homeowner-assisted situation. And after having 2 or 3 really successful transactions, they actually created a pilot program that navigated between the tax department at the county and the human services side of the county. Because what we found was that oftentimes there was human service side services that people could tap into to help stabilize them as well, in addition to the housing. And by kind of coordinating through that, they figured they might be able to stave off some of the forfeitures. It is now 6 full-time navigators at the county between those 2 departments, and they have cut their forfeitures down by about 1/3 of what it used to be because they now have the navigators helping and intervening sooner. Don't worry, in about 10 minutes I'll have it back on. And the city did something similar with the assessment department because they realized they weren't really helping homeowners. They were just penalizing them. So sometimes it doesn't seem like you're making any progress, especially sometimes with government entities. But if you're just consistent and you keep pushing and you find the right people, you can start to make some difference in how they choose to operate. And so now they also have navigators that will step in and reach out to us or other resources before they start slapping on a bunch of assessments that could jeopardize the ownership of a particular property. So some of the core elements, this first one is really, really important. We sometimes just march forward because we've got things to do. We got to get people through. We got to make certain numbers. We got to serve certain people. We got to get numbers out the doors. But this particular approach only moves at the speed of trust. Because you are changing someone's circumstances, and while from your perspective you're changing it for the better, when someone has existed for maybe a decade or more, trying to survive, trying to keep head above water, being denied left, right, every other organization they've gone through, and then someone says, oh, we might be able to help you. There's both a relief, but there's also a, what is this all about? This is also a very relationship-intensive approach. There have been situations that have taken 2 or 3 years of conversation before a homeowner has agreed to become part of the land trust. And then there's others that move very quickly, sometimes out of need, sometimes because they're just ready. But it is really about building relationship. And although you may have an application process and someone coming through the homeowner assisted program is going to follow that application process, you are dealing with a different mindset. This is not a first-time home buyer. It's not someone who expected to have to come through your doors. And you can't start treating them as if they don't know anything, or they don't know anything about their home. We shouldn't, anyway, anybody coming through our doors, but it's a different perspective. And so you really just need to meet people where they're at. And if it's really just having a conversation to understand what high level, what the land trust is about, that could be your first 5 or 10 minute conversation. But the understanding of their particular situation and what brought them to the table is also crucial, because you have some of the strongest people walking into the office, and I'm going to tear up, and they will break down because they've gone to 12 other organizations and nobody has given them any hope. And you are saying, I don't know if we can do it, but let's walk this journey together and see if we can figure out if there's a way we can help you. And these are really, really tough situations in most cases. I mentioned this morning in the buyer-driven, we had a gentleman who, for 4 years, because a relative stripped all the copper out of his house while he was in the hospital, had water coming from the main line in the basement. He had no running water in the house. And legal aid actually brought him to the City of Lakes Land Trust and said, can you step in? And part of the conversation we had with the gentleman, he also is functionally illiterate, so we expect he has no more than about a first grade education. So you think about the documents somebody has to sign, you think about all the stuff. It's really important that they also have representation, whether it be legal aid, whether it be a family member, whether it be somebody. But she said, you know, we have options in the state of Minnesota to solve the tax piece of it. We have some different programs for seniors, for individuals with disabilities. But she said what the land trust is going to offer you is a full solution. Not only are they going to satisfy the financial piece, but they're going to come in and do rehab. They're going to get your water back on. They're going to get the squirrels out of your soffit and fascia. They're going to get you new windows, and we kind of walk through that. So when you think about this homeowner-assisted program, it is a comprehensive solution. It is not just a single piece, and that's why I hammer on the rehab piece of it. Because if someone still has open windows, doors that don't shut, no insulation, and their heating bill in Minneapolis during the middle of winter is $800 a month, that's not going to be sustainable, no matter how much we pay off in the front end. You also need to understand your city code, because in that case, our city will board up a house if they know the water is shut off. So talk about relationships and partnerships. This is a great example. We knew the city would shut off if they found out that the water wasn't on in the rest of the house. We were stepping in to do the closing, which I'll talk about what that means in just a second, and have some really strong contractors. So I had to have a conversation and say, do you have a plumber? who will be at the house the morning we close and who is comfortable pulling a permit after he plumbs everything in the house. And I said, is that doable and is it ethical and will it get him in trouble? He's like, no, we always pull permits after the fact sometimes because, you know, we never get around to pulling permits, some things. So within 24 hours, we had water back on, functioning toilets, functioning sink, and then the plumber pulled the permit to get the work permitted. But that only came through relationship and that came through partnership. So this is also really, really an important piece of homeowner-assisted programs is partnerships. Especially contractors who have patience, because another situation, we're going on 4 years trying to complete rehab in a gentleman's house. We've gone to conflict mediation 3 times. We're headed for our 4th time, and it's over stuff like trying to remove 40-year-old carpet in the house to remove lead hazards. So it really is about patience, it's about respect, and it's about trust. You'll also want to make sure that there is understanding because, as I mentioned, this gentleman, lower education level, was not a reader. We needed to make sure that he understood what he was getting into so that there was no sense from family members or other community members that we were somehow taking advantage of a vulnerable adult. So that representation is there. Legal aid has been with us on many of these. We always make sure that they meet with an attorney, and if we know of a circumstance that might impact comprehension of what the individual is signing on to, we do gently let our attorneys know that so that they can take the care that they need to make sure that that understanding is there. The other is the resale restrictions. This is a really big one, and in the next slide, I think it is, I'm going to show you the resale example that I walk through with homeowners, because we want them to understand what it might look like in the future. As we have gone through this over time, we've learned several lessons, and one of them is that sometimes that financial investment that you need to make doesn't necessarily equal 20% of the market value of the home at the time the home comes into the land trust. So when we have a conversation, and one of the things you want to think about when you think about one of these programs, what is the minimum investment you need to make the home affordable? Sometimes it may equate to the financial challenge that you're paying off or the rehab that you're doing. Sometimes it may not. In our case, if that financial investment does not equal the minimum we want in, which is 20% of the market price, then we do ask the homeowner to relinquish some additional equity off the top. So I'll just be very candid. It's not been dramatic. It might be $10,000, it might be $5,000. But keep in mind, we're also doing somewhere usually between $70,000 and $100,000 worth of rehab, which does not go into the base price calculation. So it's not as though we're not coming to the table with more than just that financial piece. But when it comes to calculating the base price for the land trust piece, we do not include the rehab, but sometimes we have to look at that equity relinquish up front. I'm not sure what I meant by owner disclosure. I'll have to think about that and come back to it. The application I mentioned is the process. We've talked on that. We also do a property review, so we have to walk through the property, and there have been situations where we have not chosen to move forward because the rehab was so significant. It didn't matter how much we brought. The house should have been a gut rehab or a demolition. And it's only happened a couple times, but that's an important piece, and make sure you bring someone with you who can kind of spot those major things, because just doing a walkthrough doesn't necessarily uncover everything. And there's often a lot of DIY and creative rehab, as we all are, right? When we don't have the money to do something, it's like, where's the duct tape and where's the other things that we can put into place? And then a title search is critical. So when you think about the elements of this program, make sure you also have a really good title company. They can figure out if there's any other outstanding mortgages, if there's any other liens against the property. We've had situations where city, county, or somebody has brought somebody to us. We start getting in a conversation. We're through the application process, and then we find out there's 3 other siblings that we have to somehow track down and have a conversation with because they all have an equal share in the house. And that can be a showstopper. But that might not show up if they don't want to divulge it, but it will show up in the documents that are on record. Questions at this point? Yes? How have you dealt with those siblings? In one case, we sat down with 2 out of 3 of the siblings, and we just weren't able to move forward with it. The most recent one, we had documentation that said that the person who was living in the house, all the siblings had agreed that that was the person who was in the house, but all 4 needed to agree if there was any kind of change in ownership structure of the home. One person was incarcerated, one was dead, and the other one, she never followed through to get to us, so we can't move forward in those cases. We had another situation where I was in the home, I was having conversation, the woman swore up, down, left, and right. She had the power of attorney over her grandmother who had dementia. And I was like, well, can you show me power of attorney? Because I need to get in and, we need to find her Social Security income, all this type of stuff. And she brings me out a handwritten note. I'm like, really sorry, that's not gonna fly. And you get into a lot of family dynamics as well. So it is important, but oftentimes it is the single individual who's coming to us, has no family, really doesn't have a lot of support, and is seeking assistance from us. Excuse me. We offer minimal assistance, I'll be candid, because we want to also make sure that people are wanting to move through the process, right? So it's either paper. We don't have a fillable online yet. We are working towards that. I'm looking at my colleague, Julie, over here. We're super excited about hopefully having an online one sometime early next year. But we mail, we drop off, we email. People can do all the same. They can email it to us. We actually still have a fax that we receive, but we can't send out, we purposely did that. But we can receive faxes. You can mail it. You can drop it off. We are present 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And some of us are there till 6 or so, just with different kind of shifts. And we try to be as present as possible. But if people have questions, oftentimes if somebody's coming to us through an advocate, the advocate will help them fill that out as well. Yeah, and it's a 2-page document, that not including the income documentation that's required. Basic stuff, name, demographic, employment, income source, bankruptcy, children, who's living in the house, and then we require 8 consecutive pay stubs if someone's actively working, Social Security letter, kind of the usuals you all are familiar with. A lot of ours is word of mouth, quite frankly, and a lot of the referrals came from county, city, and legal aid initially, but we have actually had people just call and say, I was looking on your website, and I see that you help people buy homes. Do you ever help us stay in the homes? So we've had some people inquire that way as well. But actually, all of our programs are pretty much word of mouth. We're not really known for being strong marketers at the City of Lakes. Yeah, it's been really interesting that somehow, we MLS when we list properties, but otherwise, the HIP program, I don't think we've ever truly marketed that program by itself. And we never seem to have a shortage of buyers. But that is a lot of word of mouth. I would love to do a land trust family tree of who came from where and all the connections. For a while, it was, I'll touch on this in funding, but we were getting almost a call a week from either the county, the city, or legal aid. And then our funding got stopped. And we were quiet for about 2 years, and a lot of those dropped off because we weren't a resource. And now it's starting to pick up again. I did cover it. Okay, a couple more core elements. So if you are, okay, sorry, I made a link to the resale example, but it's not coming up on here. If you are looking to just try to help somebody understand what this looks like and you don't want to pay for an appraisal, we do an appraisal once somebody's ready to truly move forward. But if you're in the discussion stage, comparative market analysis, if you've got a realtor who's willing to do those for you for a nominal fee, are really helpful. The kind of the last resort, I would say, would be the assessed value of the property. But when we do that, then we do a resale example, which I'm just gonna hop out of here for a second and, okay, hopefully that works. So this is an example from this April. And what we essentially do is, and I can share this with folks as well. So we look at a starting point, just really what is the situation we have today, right? What is that market value that we're looking at in the home? And in this case, it was $225,000. I have up their current appraised value because by this time we'd already gotten an appraisal for this particular property. In the early stages, it was the CMA, the comparative market analysis that we used. even though we were paying off about $37,000, as I mentioned, we require 20% of the market value be our investment. So we showed to the homeowner that we were going to invest $45,000. Part of that was loan payoff. Some of that was also escrow for her, because in a homeowner assisted program, you also want to make sure you have a way to escrow for taxes, insurance, and lease fee, because you want to have some heads up if we're going down the same path, especially if the household is coming to you with a housing related financial challenge. So the land trust base price, the way we work, is essentially that normally it'd be a purchase agreement. In this case, we have to use the value. So the market value minus our investment. Our ground lease is going to show that land trust base price or home price or whatever's formula price, whatever term you use in your ground lease, is going to be $180,000. We make it very clear that this is an example to help them to understand how this is going to work. So we look at a future scenario, and in this case, we're just going to estimate that the new market value, should the homeowner to sell sometime in the future, has now increased to $245,000. So we've seen a change in value of $20,000. Our ground lease says that 25% of that will be that homeowner's equity, along with anything that's been paid down. And keep in mind, majority of the homeowners are coming through have no mortgages on their homes. And then 75% will stay with the property. So in the future, if this homeowner were to sell, the new sale price to the new homeowner would be $185,000. Does that register with everyone? So it's the original $180,000 that was in the ground lease plus the 25% of the change in value, or $5,000. So in this particular case, the homeowner has no liens on the property. So her estimated net proceeds will be about $185,000, minus any closing costs or realtor fees. This is really helpful for homeowners to understand that they're not being stripped of all their equity that they have built up over decades. The situations where we've paid off a mortgage are pretty few and far between. And there might be another small mortgage that's already on the property. And where people get most concerned is they have no liens on the property. So are you going to take the $200,000 that I've built up over the last 40 years? And it's really helping to understand, while there might be a little bit giving up at this point in time, that you become part of the land trust versus losing $200,000 in equity because you lose ownership of the home. And that moving forward, the only thing you're going to give up is a portion of the change in market value. And for many, this $245,000, this is actually a home that's in good shape. A lot of the homes that are coming in at $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 because the level of repair that's needed on them. It would be $80,000 minus what we came in to pay it off. We're going to take that rehab cost at that point in time because we're not coming in with anything technically. So in a situation where we're only doing rehab, we would use the rehab or a portion thereof, depending on how much rehab. I have a situation where we might be doing $200,000 worth of rehab to try to get a house shored up. And we have to have a conversation about how much is actually relinquished in equity. Yeah, because that's a significant impact to that particular house. That's just to pay off the financial piece of the transaction. We have a different source of funds, or we look at the rehab differently. So the affordability and the rehab are two different sources of funds. That's not included in this calculation. So that was the resale example. It's always really important to make sure you got the funding before you make any promises or commitments. And that can get really tricky if someone's only telling you they have one mortgage for $50,000 and then you discover three other ones that total $250,000. That due diligence piece is really important up front. So make sure you're really understanding what needs to be satisfied. And sometimes you may not satisfy everything. You may just satisfy the one that's delinquent or in jeopardy, right? So. Legal review, we kind of touched on the ground lease or the deed restriction. You want to make sure that you are reviewing all of that. Similar to a buyer, you're just going to have them meet with the attorney. They can choose the attorney. Oftentimes, if they're working with legal aid, that attorney will review that for them. Funding addendums. So right now we're very fortunate. We have a pretty good pot of money from the city of Minneapolis for homeowner stabilization. But they do require that a declaration that runs with a declaration of covenants for their funds runs with the land, and that has to go on to the ground lease. And so we do need to ensure that that goes with the ground lease and the attorney reviews that so the buyer or the homeowner understands. And then I mentioned the fact in the tax forfeiture, there's that period of time where we're a little vulnerable. We had a situation where me being the brainchild thought, oh, hey, let's step in earlier before it's actually in forfeiture and we can save all these costs. So we went in satisfied about $18,000 worth of past taxes, and then the homeowner started to backpedal and said he wasn't sure he wanted the home to become part of the land trust. That was the first conflict mediation. After that experience, because we had always kind of moved forward in good faith with homeowners, we realized that we needed to put a mortgage for the funds that the land trust is bringing. But it is a forgivable, I think after 10 years, no interest, no payment. It is really just put on there so that we don't come in with $100,000 to stabilize someone and then the next day they sell the property and we don't have any title or we have no way to recoup that. It's really just a protection mechanism. It's not trying to get anything from the homeowner. But that's one of those lessons learned. And then we technically do a closing, meaning that although there's not a lender involved, usually in most cases, we do have title actually do the transaction. They are doing the quick claiming the land to the land trust. We are signing the ground lease. We're signing any other funding agreements. And then moving forward, that home is part of the land trust. And then we start the rehab process. It's more of a quick claim of the land, and so then there's a warranty deed that we have the title to the land. And I honestly don't know if we issue a new deed for the improvements. I've never looked that closely. Talk about partnership, that's how much trust I have in our title company. But yeah, I know it's the quick claim, and I don't recall if we do a declaration of severance like we do with our other situations. Yeah, that one's escaping me this morning, or this afternoon. Whew. I don't know what time it is. So the rehab, if those of you who were in the buyer-driven program this morning, very similar. We do all the testing, doesn't matter how long they've been in the home, we do lead testing, we do energy efficiency, we do radon, and if we need to, we do asbestos. And we follow our same owner-occupied rehab process that we do with our buyer-driven program. So we do all that testing, we do a rehab scope, we go out for competitive bid, and then the negotiation starts. And that's why sometimes it can take 2 to 4 years to get rehab done. That is, for some who are in the partnership, I talked about the regulatory services. It's the homeowner assisted program that prompted me to reach out to the inspectors in our regulatory department, because as soon as, again, we came in title, and in our recording it shows us as the owner because we own the land. We were just getting hit with assessments. And for some of our homeowners who struggle with mental health, that can really spiral. And so we'd be making progress, the letter from the city would come, there was tension already between the homeowner and the city, and we're back here talking about rehab scope. So then we have to start the process again, make sure we're building the trust, everything's going well, the next assessment comes. And so it became this very vicious cycle. So we sat down with regulatory and said, here's the scoop. We can't just march in and do whatever we want in the homes. And in some cases where we know there's mental health, specific diagnosis, and we know our homeowners are not on their medication, we cannot enter a contract because they are vulnerable and they don't necessarily have the capacity to enter a contract. So these are the things that it'd be easy. Houses are easy. Buildings are easy. People are not. And I don't say that in a mean way, but it is so much easier to work on a vacant home than it is on an owner-occupied rehab. And it's also, it's hard to explain, but it's like you look at a situation and go, oh my gosh, you haven't had a functioning bathroom for 10 years. Why are you fighting the land trust to come in and repair your bathroom? But there's just, people get into certain circumstances that are really hard to move off of without a great deal of anxiety, and sometimes, I'll be honest, it's really hard to remember that because you're just like, I just need to get this done, right? And it doesn't, I mean, in my wildest dreams, if you ever start dealing with tax forfeited houses, first of all, you think that people just get vaporized. because you walk in and everything exists because somebody's just come in and evicted them. But all the pictures are there, all the stuff is there. If you deal with estate properties, also very interesting because you get to see people's lives. And but you also kind of walk away going, what can I absolutely toss from my own house? Because you see just generations of stuff and things that get tossed and that people don't care about other than you, which is a really sad thing to think about, but it's the reality. So, yeah. Yes? We have engaged the community, the county and the navigators, and they often will come in. We have had community members actually call in adult protection in a couple of cases unbeknownst to us, but that was post, like they've been in our land trust for 6-7 years, but something's happened in the neighborhood that they're concerned about. But we have a homeowner engagement, or some of you may have met Shang. She's our social impact manager, and we're having a conversation right now because we do have some hoarding situations that we've been made aware of. We also have some significant mental health in some of our households that are kind of now coming outside the household and impacting. And having this very real conversation about what we can do as the community land trust and what resources we need to bring in partnership. So it is social workers, it is mental health caseworkers, like how do we build those deeper relationships, because our county contacts are maxed out. So for them to try to respond to us, and they have a short window of 30 days to try to address a situation we may call about, we need kind of more of that ongoing support, and we're trying to figure that out. Because, you know, we've helped now, and we have this relationship. We can't just say, okay, well, now it's not convenient. Because we still have to be mindful of the property. We are a steward of that property. So in the coldest of days that we want to be cold, we still have to make sure that the property is not destroyed. So it's a fine balance that you have to walk, but we are very, very aware, especially in the last, I would say 6 to 9 months, with some of the situations that have arisen, that we need to figure out how better to manage it, because we are not social workers. Yeah. Did you have a question? Okay, awesome. Escrow, I talked about that. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. So, how are we doing on time? Ooh, 2:24. All right, so a couple of examples. I shared this one with you, the estate, just to give you an idea of how you might apply this in your own community. The tax forfeited we've talked about. Actually, we kind of talked about all of these. The refinance is a really interesting one, and about a year ago, actually 2 years ago now, with Grounded Solutions, we were talking through possibly trying to do this pilot program through Freddie Mac. 4 different, Grace is well aware of this, 4 different cities that individuals who are coming off of forbearance that now we're going to have a payment that was too much, could be referred to a shared equity program or a community land trust to see if they could bring an affordability investment and refinance at a lower loan amount and a lower monthly payment. I know we didn't end up with anybody that was able to achieve that, but and I think part of it, just the pool that was being referred was fairly small in the pilot. But it was a great concept. And we were just talking to a household that we were going to try to push U.S. Bank to do that. But they were over income by $1,000, which was so heartbreaking. Ugh. It was so heartbreaking. But yeah, we had the home buyer counselor in. We're like, okay, we can, we're going to have to kind of push the envelope. We're going to have to see if they're willing to do this. But it would have been so awesome, because we could have come in with, at least $80,000 to get them down to almost $120,000 mortgage versus the $200,000 mortgage, plus do a bunch of deferred maintenance rehab that they really needed to have done. So you do have some heartbreaking situations. Contract for deed, we've done one of those. We have a second one in process, and that's just a new one for us, so we've kind of figured out how that works as well. But that's an awesome one, especially if you have any contract for deed programs. And sometimes those can be really tricky and really predatory. So if you have someone who's facing the loss of their home because of a contract for deed, if there's any way you can step in, especially if it's one that has not been in the favor of the contract for deed holder or payer, the person in the house, it'd be great if you could figure out a way to help them pay that off and stay in the home if they wanted to. We haven't, yeah, go ahead. It's a little more robust than a rent-to-own. Yeah, because you actually have some ownership in the home, where rent-to-own, you really don't have any title to that. Yeah, but it's similar concept. The significant repairs, I'll be candid, we haven't done this one, but we have about 3 conversations in process right now, and we're finding that being more and more of the inquiries that are coming in, but a similar concept. I mean, if you develop the framework for this, you can pretty much apply it wherever there might be an opportunity to do so. I just wanted to share this with you. So every 2 years, the City of Lakes Community Land Trust does a survey of all of our homeowners. And in this case, we did one with some interviews. We've helped 13 households through what we call Project Sustain Legacy. That is the name of our homeowner-assisted program. And they did interviews, and this was just some of the statistics. So 13 homeowners, we've now done 14 actually, 21 household members. And of those, we have 6 single women, 2 of whom had dependent children. This is really interesting. Our average AMI through the Homeowner Assisted Program is about mid-30s% AMI. This is the lowest income households that we serve is through this program. And so the average household income was just shy of $21,000, and the average market price was about $120,000. Now keep in mind, most of those situations we were coming in, as I said, on average about $90,000 worth of rehab. So those market values have gone up significantly. We do have 1 duplex, which is actually 2 duplexes, owner-occupied duplexes that have come through this program, and you can see the other statistics. So 8 white, 4 Black African American, and 1 multiracial ethnicity, and then 8 households that are living with disability. And almost 2/3 of the households are seniors, 60 plus. The physical disabilities are minimal. There's probably only 1 right now, which we don't usually do in owner-occupied rehab, but we are for longevity in the house, is we're building out a bathroom on the first floor because that's what she will need long-term to stay in the house. So we did negotiate that with her. Most of it is mental health that is classified as disabled. I'm trying to think who's, I'm trying to go through the homeowners now. Yeah. We do, even through the buyer-driven program, we get individuals who are seeking and asking what degree of rehab we can do post. We've got some really good programs in the county as well as other things in the state, but it's really hard to retrofit a house, especially an older house with the narrow doorways and all that type of stuff. But if they've been in the house, then it's like trying to figure out what they need on a first floor or something like that we can adapt pretty quickly. But those have been few and far between. So our ground lease is the same across the board. We have some families that have heirs, so they would have talked to us about inheritability. Our ground lease says that your partner, your spouse, or children can inherit the home. And the long-term agreement, they don't have to be income qualified. Anybody else has to be income qualified to own and live the home, or live in the home. Oftentimes we have individuals who have no heirs. And we have, the very first gentleman we helped actually signed a transfer upon death deed, so it will come to the land trust when he passes. We had a brother and sister. God bless them, the sister has passed, but whew, she had quite the vocabulary. And was very vocal. And we'd meet in libraries. So we'd be in a meeting room, and she's like, ah, and she'd be swearing up a storm about the mother-in-law and or the stepmother, and the brother. And so I'd be like, Mary, just bring it down just a little bit, inside voice. But she passed, and her brother is now trying to decide between us and the Catholic Church. So we'll see who wins out on that one. But it's, a lot of it is more family. They'll pass it down to family. We encourage all of our homeowners to please do a will. Not everybody does, but we strongly encourage that they do wills. But we do have that conversation. If you want it to come into the land trust, there's a way to do it that avoids probate and a bunch of cost, and it can come in. We did have one woman, actually we helped one woman stay in her home, and she had a friend who ended up with terminal leukemia and had no family, 4th generation in the home. The family had actually built the home, and she did not want it to go to like a investor and turn into a rental. So she actually quitclaimed the deed to me in an afternoon of having a conversation because her friend had talked about who we were, the fact that we would keep it owner occupied, that we would be able to serve a lower income household. But that's what, when I talk about that trust, it's actually really scary sometimes too, of how quickly people will trust you and the responsibility that comes with that. I mean, think about it. It's like, yes, your friend vouched for us, but you just barely met me and I'm coming back the next day with a quitclaim deed, you know, and you're letting me go up and dig through all your business because there was a thing about the great-grandmother and we had to find out that, you know, we had her death certificate, so we had to go back and search a few generations. But she's like, just go up and look in my, you know, it's somewhere up there. And, you know, there's all these letters from World War II and I'm going, oh man. I mean, it's amazing, but it's also can be really heavy. So just kind of prepare yourself for that. But the home came in and, you know, we had an unending lease. So however long she remained with us, she was able to stay in the home for as long as she could stay in the home. And she did end up passing and we rehabbed it and we have a new family in the home. We have, I think we've only closed on one project, Sustained Legacy, in 2023. We're scheduled for potentially a second one. Yep. So it's not one that you're going to all of a sudden have 20 units coming in, but quite frankly, it is some of the most rewarding, even though it is some of the harder work. So, funding, I'm just going to touch base on this because I really want us to have a little bit of fun, all this like heavy stuff. Affordability investments, there are same funders, except for Minnesota Housing. Minnesota Housing will not let us use, oh, did I say that out loud? One of our funders will not let us use their dollars for this program. But Hennepin County, the city, they do allow us, plus we've had some private philanthropic funds that have supported this program. Rehab assistance is mainly city and county and Hennepin County environmental response funds, which is lead and asbestos abatement. General operating, one of the things that's really important is things change over time. So you may do your due diligence and it looks like the homeowner can cover the taxes, insurance, and the lease fee, but taxes go up, or they used to go up. That's a whole nother story because we have a different assessment now on land trust properties, but we actually help some people in the higher market neighborhoods so their taxes continue to go up. They can't always afford the new escrow payment. So you also have to have some capacity to do maybe fund or cover a little bit because we do reserve the right at time of sale or of transfer to an estate to recoup anything that we've paid out on behalf of that property. But you also want to make sure that they're contributing something. So they may have a $400 escrow payment, but we know they only get $700 in Social Security. We may be willing to accept a $300 or a $250 payment so they have some breathing room. And we've just learned that lesson over time. Staffing, you got to have somebody who's focused on this. It is truly about, again, the relationship. So the fact that it may just sit over here. Now you may have one opportunity or two opportunities, but if you start to get some consistency, you need to have somebody who can really take the time and build the relationship and walk people through this program. And somebody who knows how to relate to people. This is not just pushing people through a process. You just need to have somebody who can really relate to people and be patient and want to build relationship. And unfortunately, not everybody wants to do that, even in the work that we do. Especially if you are all new to starting up land trusts, the one thing I can tell you is that you are not going to figure out everything, no matter how many years you do this. You need to just address situations as they come up. So you do your best to create policies, you do your best to create procedures, but again, we're dealing with individuals and we're dealing with families, and they're gonna come with their own situations. I think you just need to be very candid to say we're not, you do need to take care of this home. We've kind of reset you, but the expectation is we are not now your landlord, and we're not gonna take care of all the repairs. Now, can we get them connected to community resources? Different things, yes, that is part of Shang's responsibility and what she offers, but we make it very clear on all of our homeowners, we are not the person to call for all the repairs. You can call us for a referral, but we're not going to step in and do the repair, and that's the same with the homeowner assisted program as well. And then just the investment versus the alternatives. So we often get asked, why can't they do a reverse mortgage? Why can't they refinance? Why can't? So you need to be able to demonstrate that this really is their only option, especially to funders, because they want to make sure you're not being predatory and that you're not doing equity stripping. And that's, again, where the legal piece comes really important to be present. So a couple of lessons I've already touched on. Relationship intensive, do not underestimate what it takes to do a homeowner assisted program. One of the things I learned most recently is that there can be Social Security and disability payment implications when someone transfers ownership of the land into the land trust. The investment needs to be at least equal to the value of the land. Otherwise, they can see something at Social Security where they're like, there's something that can impact it. I don't fully understand it, but just know that if you have somebody who's on Social Security or disability, it'd be really helpful to make sure that you're talking with someone who understands that world a little bit better. And we haven't run into it where there hasn't been like another lien or anything out there, but we did run into it where we were refinancing a scenario. So it could be also dependent on what you're trying to solve for. But it just raised kind of a red flag to us to know that there could be implications. We talked to our funders about being patient funding sources. So you want us to spend your dollars in 20 months. We can't do that if rehab is taking 4 years. So we need to have conversations with our funders to say, if a home is coming in through this program, we need to have a little bit of more time to do what we need to do. I've touched on strong partnerships as well as sustainability. And I mentioned we will not assist somebody with a housing financial challenge only. The rehab, we have to have the capacity to do the rehab, so it's a comprehensive solution and not just a single source solution. Oh, that's why. Okay, so I was gonna do this big group thing, but then I was like, you know what, this is last day, it's the end, it's the afternoon, everybody's been sitting, so guess what? We're gonna play Land Trust Bingo because you all are here to learn about land trust, all right? So, I'm gonna pass around an envelope, and while I'm doing that, actually, Julie, would you mind passing these out? Thanks. Okay, so here's how it's gonna go. I'm not sure how much time we have, but even if we have 10 minutes, we can have a good time. So those of you who get bingo, you have your choice of prizes. You have a rubber duck who has different characters, so you can choose the rubber duck. I only have 3, so if we have a really rousing game of bingo, you might have to give it up. And then we have a land trust koozie, so you can have a koozie. And so how this is gonna go, you go ahead and open up the packets, and you will see that you have a bingo card, and you have a, whatever that thing is called, the dabbler or whatever it's called. You wanna grab one of those if you're not a bingo player. What is all this? Oh. Has everybody got a bingo card and a dabbler? A dabbler, a dabbler, however you want to refer to it as. I told you I'm obviously not a bingo player. Okay, so here's how it's gonna go. You have certain things on your bingo card that say something like subleasing, right? So this isn't all just about homeownership programs. This is about community land trust. So when you think about subleasing, is that related to the occupancy requirement? Is it related to something? So I'm gonna say, oh, occupancy, and you need to look on your bingo card and see if there's something in relation to occupancy on your bingo card and mark it off. And so we'll keep it really simple. We'll just do in line, okay? You guys ready? All right. This is really interesting because last time I did this, people were like, we start going through because somebody had bingo, and I'm like, no, that has nothing to do with occupancy. They're like, oh man. So. Up and down, sideways, or diagonal. Diagonal, up, down, sideways. Yep, doesn't matter. And I have extra bingo cards, so if we need to do another one, we can. All right, and the free space is the house. So if you're not a bingo player, just know you already got one free space. All right, here we go. I, lease fees. Do you have something on your card in I that's related to lease fees? Not everybody does, so you just have to kind of check. You can what? Then you can, or there shouldn't be, but you can think there's more than one. Okay. Are we good? G, ooh, this is a good one. Capital improvements. All right, B, resales. Resales, B, resales. Is it working? People are so serious. They're like, oh, got my bingo card. There shouldn't be, but there could be. If you could interpret it any way you want, Alex, but I don't think I set it up. But who knows? These are just. Okay, O for repair maintenance. I should add some music in the background. B, delinquency foreclosure. I'm sorry, I'm just going to put this to sleep so that you don't have to stare at it. Okay. O, lease fees. O. Oh. Are we doing okay? Is this table doing okay? G, refinance HELOC. So in the G column, do you have something that it would be related to refinancing or a home equity line of credit for a land trust homeowner? All right. N, resales. B, outreach education. O, occupancy. N, ouch. Sorry, just hit myself with the, getting too excited. N, delinquency foreclosure. B, refinance or HELOC. Needs more eyes. Home equity line of credit. So what are the things you have to think about when a homeowner wants to draw down or create a home equity line of credit? Any thoughts? Can they just go take however much they want to take out? No. Yeah, so you do need to really give some thought as to how much they can take out. So you want to try to do an equity calculation so you can determine how much is available to them so they're not overdrawing and turning themselves upside down. I'm trying to find an I here. 1 second. Hang on. Not trying to fix the game. I'm just trying to give you all an option here. There should be some I's. Okay, well, in the meantime, capital improvements. Where's my eyes? Oh, there it is. I, repair maintenance. N, for delinquency foreclosure. Oh, we already had that one. Wow. Should have given this a different thought. Okay. N, lease fees. That actually hurt my lip. G, occupancy. Uh-oh. All right, well, let's see. Ready? Okay, what do you got?
For B, I have purchase option, which I think was about resale.
Yes, yep.
For I have P, delinquency, which I think was about P.
Lease fees, yep.
N was my free space. G was subletting for
Okay. Yep.
And then O, I have orientations, which was something about telling people what they had to do, which I think covered maybe a lot of them.
There was no outreach or education in O.
Well, but there was something that you would have told people about in the orientation.
All right, all right. You're stretching, you're stretching, you're stretching. So O was repairs, maintenance.
Oh, yeah, so it was like it's an expectation that you're doing repairs and maintenance on your home. That's what I'm doing.
That's a pretty loose interpretation of what the intention of this game was. Okay, all right. So, all right, I'll give it to you. I got some extra koozies. Okay, let's see what you have. All right, I can be flexible. It's all about being flexible. Okay, what do you have?
Good job of reflecting back to what it was, but I had B, capital improvements.
Potentially for refinance and HELOC. That might be a reason somebody would take it out.
I, sale price calculation.
Sorry about that. I can't even stretch that one. It was lease fees and repair maintenance. So what was your, for I?
So I guess I was thinking that repairs and maintenance would be part of the sale price calculation if you had repair deductions and stuff.
Post-purchase rehab expenses.
And I guess I was thinking more in terms of like the resale formula, like you were figuring out whether you deductions at resale for.
So, yep. So this is a great question or a great topic. I didn't know we were going to get all serious again. But repair and maintenance, so one, which I appreciate the thinking through this, is at time of resale, which is one of the things we did. Well, repair and maintenance, you said it was resales, right, that you marked off on I? Sale price calculation. So the thought was if somebody doesn't keep their home up with repair and maintenance, that you might deduct. That's going to really vary by organization. If you are selling directly to another land trust buyer, it's going to be a negotiation of how much repair is done between the existing homeowner and the new homeowner. If you are stepping in and buying it back, you most likely will do a reduction. And then you have to think about capital improvements and whether or not you give any credit to that. So, all right, I'll let that one slide. Okay. And what was your N? Yep, on resales. Go ahead. Occupancy, yep. In what case? You had repair, maintenance, lease fees, occupancy, and capital improvements. Repairs and maintenance, lease fees, occupancy, and capital improvements. I don't know if I can give you that one. I'm sorry. I don't like to disappoint, but I don't think I can stretch that far. Okay, so we got one winner. Any other winners? Okay. Additional liens? Yep, that would come into play in a refinance or a HELOC situation. All right, I'll give it to you because it's the repair and maintenance. Obviously, I need to make some changes to my bingo game. For, in what case, the resales or in N? Or in G, or G? In N, okay, yep. There was capital improvements, refinance, HELOC, and occupancy. I'm sorry, what? Not really, not according to my little slips of paper that are sitting over here. I have them all laid out over here, dear colleague of mine. Okay, all right. Okay, we'll figure capital improvements. Yes, go ahead. Yeah, that could fall into capital improvements or repairs. Okay, so we got two winners. Anybody else? Okay, it's a good thing. I only brought 3 ducks. So if there's a fight over the ducks, I will leave it up to you all. I do have 4 koozies, so you could have a koozie. Let's see if we have, what do we have? We have 7 minutes. Do you want to do another game? There's more sheets in there. Do you want to do one more? Or is there any other questions? We can also just go to questions and things. Do you need some more? Do you guys have some? Oh, you could do that too. You could use the same board. But I do have some extras, so. What I do appreciate, actually, this has been really fun for you all to challenge my game. Not taking it personally. But it does like have you think about these things in different ways, right? I think about outreach and education as really orientation and disclosures and those type of things, but I really appreciate the interpretations and things. We get asked a lot, don't we, are you concerned that you're going to be perceived as being predatory? And I think it just really need to understand the fact that individuals are one step away from homelessness and one step away from losing all of their equity. And I would hope that people would understand by maybe giving up a little bit to retain majority of it might not be so bad of a deal for someone. But it is important to have those disclosures, the education, and the legal in everything we do. Because it doesn't matter how many documents you have somebody sign, no matter how many times you've gone through it, they will look you straight in the eye and say that you've never told them that you would own the land or that they would have any share in appreciation. So it is, you can't emphasize it enough. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Thank you all very much. Have a great rest of the afternoon.